What if we told you that one of the most profitable airlines in the world deliberately flies fewer passengers? That sounds completely backwards, right? In an industry where budget carriers obsess over packing as many bodies as possible into every available inch of cabin space, shrinking seats, removing recline, stripping away every amenity, Singapore Airlines made a jaw-dropping decision that defied every conventional rule of aviation economics. They cut their most luxurious first-class suites in half, from 12 down to just 6, in a fleet-wide redesign that costs a staggering $850 million. Welcome to the World Documentaries. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating business stories in modern aviation: how a single airline turned the economics of flying completely upside down, and why flying fewer people sometimes makes far more financial sense. If you find this topic as fascinating as we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a documentary like this one. Let's get into it. The iron math of budget airlines. To understand why Singapore Airlines' strategy is so revolutionary, we first need to understand the brutal arithmetic that governs the low-cost carrier model. Ultra-budget airlines like Ryanair, Spirit Airlines operate on profit margins so razor-thin that they sometimes earn just a few dollars of net income per passenger. Their entire financial survival depends on one thing and one thing only: volume. Every empty seat is a catastrophic loss. Every unused square foot of cabin floor space is wasted potential revenue. This is why budget airlines invest enormous engineering effort into shrinking seat pitch to the legal minimum, using the thinnest seat cushions possible, removing galleys, locking out reclining mechanisms, and even charging passengers for carry-on luggage. Their goal is to transform the airplane into the most efficient human transport container legally and aerodynamically possible. To a budget carrier, the airplane is simply a flying bus, an empty space. That is the enemy. But there exists a completely different world operating by entirely different rules, and Singapore Airlines lives in that world. A different kind of real estate. The premium cabin philosophy. Here is the key insight that separates airline strategy thinkers from the rest. An airplane is not just a vehicle, it is a piece of extremely expensive, tightly constrained flying real estate. Much like a property developer constructing a skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan, an airline has a fixed, immovable amount of square footage. You cannot add an extra floor mid-flight. You cannot push the walls outward. The discipline of airline management therefore revolves around one central metric known as LOPA, the layout of passenger accommodations, which is essentially the science of maximizing revenue generated per square foot of cabin space. Economy class operates on the principle of volume. Pack in as many passengers as possible and rely on sheer numbers to cover enormous baseline operating costs like fuel, crew salaries, maintenance, and airport fees. But premium cabins operate on a completely different principle: yield. A business class seat might occupy 3 times the physical floor space of an economy seat, yet the ticket routinely commands 5, 6, or even 10 times the price. Industry data shows that premium economy cabins alone can generate up to 33% higher revenue per square foot than standard economy. That geometric sweet spot is where the real profit lives: a decade of luxury, then a crisis of competition. In October 2007, Singapore Airlines made aviation history by becoming the launch customer for the Airbus A380, the largest, heaviest passenger aircraft ever built. On that inaugural flight, they introduced the world to something that had never existed before in commercial aviation: fully enclosed private suites, complete with sliding privacy doors, standalone leather armchairs, and beds that could be combined into a double sleeping area for couples traveling together. It was an instant sensation that redefined what luxury air travel could look like and set the gold standard for the entire industry. But a decade is a long time in aviation. By the mid-2010s, the competitive landscape had shifted dramatically. The so-called Middle East three Emirates, Etihad, and Qatar Airways had not just caught up with Singapore Airlines. In many respects, they had surpassed them. These carriers introduced outlandish amenities: onboard shower spas, walk-in cocktail bars, and multi-room flying apartments complete with dedicated butlers. Singapore's original 2007 suites, once the pinnacle of the industry, now looked dated and vulnerable. The airline urgently needed to reclaim its throne, but it faced a fascinating geometric problem: the $850 million gamble and a geometric puzzle. In November 2017, Singapore Airlines unveiled an ambitious four-year, $850 million fleet-wide retrofit program for their A380 aircraft. The plan was bold: move the first-class suites from the main deck up to the upper deck, consolidating all premium passengers in one exclusive zone, completely separated from the high-density traffic below. It sounded elegant in theory, but the physical reality of the A380's unusual double-decker fuselage quickly complicated everything. The aircraft's cross-section is shaped like 2 overlapping tubes, creating an egg-shaped profile, and the upper deck is significantly narrower. To put the numbers in perspective, the main deck measures 6.50 meters wide, while the upper deck measures only 5.80 meters. Furthermore, the upper deck walls curve sharply inward, severely limiting the headroom available at the sides of the cabin. The mathematical conclusion was unavoidable: maintaining all 12 suites on the narrower upper deck while simultaneously enlarging each individual room to world-class standards was geometrically impossible. The walls simply would not cooperate. So Singapore Airlines made a radical, counterintuitive choice. They cut the capacity in half, down to just 6 ultra-exclusive suites, and built each one bigger and more magnificent than anything the airline had ever offered before. Engineering scarcity, the new suites and the economics of exclusivity. The 6 new suites that emerged from this redesign are genuinely extraordinary by any standard. Unlike the original 2007 design, where a passenger's seat mechanically folded down to become the bed, meaning you had to choose between sitting and sleeping, the new suites provide both simultaneously. Each suite features a plush 21-inch wide Poltrona Frau leather swivel chair, alongside a completely separate standalone 76-inch long bed. 4 couples traveling together. A mechanical divider between adjoining suites drops flush with the floor to create a full hotel-style double bed in the sky. The largest suites in row 1 measure a staggering 54 square feet each, the equivalent of 10 to 12 standard economy seats. But here is the masterstroke. By deliberately cutting capacity from 12 to 6, Singapore Airlines manufactured profound artificial scarcity. In the ultra-luxury world, exclusivity is the product itself. With only 6 suites available on each flight, the airline engineered a cabin that consistently fills with full-fare paying customers rather than relying on frequent flyer redemptions or staff upgrades. A reliably sold-out 6-suite cabin at full retail price. Tickets often exceeding $10,000 to $15,000 one-way generates far more predictable, consistent profit than a 12-suite cabin plagued by unsold inventory and discounted redemptions. Scarcity, it turns out, is one of the most powerful pricing tools in aviation. When physics, not finance, forces the decision in October 2018, Singapore Airlines relaunched the world's longest commercial flight, a non-stop service from Singapore's Changi Airport to Newark, covering over 9,500 miles in as many as 19 grueling hours. The aircraft chosen for this extraordinary mission is the Airbus A380-900ULR. Ultra-long range for this route. The plane must carry up to 165,000 liters of aviation kerosene, a fuel load that weighs approximately 130.6 tons all by itself. Add the aircraft's own empty operating weight of roughly 142.4 tons, and the plane is already sitting at 273 tons before a single passenger or piece of luggage comes aboard. The A350-900ULR's maximum certified takeoff weight is 280 tons. That leaves a total payload budget of just 7 tons. 7 tons. That is the entire allowable weight for every passenger. Every bag, every meal service, every liter of water, and every crew member required for a 19-hour duty cycle. The mathematics become immediately clear. Load 300 standard economy passengers, each adding roughly 110 to 120 kilograms of combined body, luggage, seat hardware, and catering weight, and you blow past the maximum takeoff weight by thousands of kilograms. The plane would be too heavy to carry enough fuel to reach the United States. Physics, not boardroom strategy, forced Singapore Airlines to make a radical configuration choice. The future of ultra-long haul, a tale of 2 strategies. Singapore Airlines' solution was brilliant in its simplicity. Remove the economy cabin entirely. Their A350-900ULR carries just 161 passengers, 267 in business class and 94 in premium economy, roughly 140 fewer people than a standard long-haul configuration. This weight reduction was not arbitrary. According to aerospace engineering principles described through the Breguet-Range equation, aircraft burn approximately 3 to 4% of their fuel load per hour simply to carry the weight of that fuel through the air. On a 19-hour flight, this penalty compounds relentlessly. A disproportionate share of the total fuel bill, which can exceed $100,000 per crossing, is spent hauling unburned fuel across the Pacific. Only premium passengers generating $5,000 to $10,000 per ticket can mathematically justify their weight on board. Interestingly, Australia's Qantas is developing a contrasting approach with Project Sunrise to 2222 or non-stop flights to London and New York aboard the larger A350-100ULR, carrying 238 passengers including a full economy cabin. Qantas can attempt this because the A350-100 has a substantially higher maximum takeoff weight of 319 tons and will feature an additional 20,000-litre rear center fuel tank. But Singapore Airlines deliberately chose not to pursue this heavier strategy. They calculated that the compounding fuel weight penalty from adding economy seats would consume those passengers' entire profit margin. To airlines, to routes, to completely opposite solutions to the same impossible physics problem.